I don't think it's much of a secret anymore that the Warriors are going to try to trade Jonathan Kuminga once his trade restriction is lifted on January 15th. And based on some actions from the Warriors head coach, it seems like the writing is even more on the wall at this point, and a trade is going to come as soon as humanly possible, as Steve Kerr benched Jonathan Kuminga, took him out of the rotation against the Chicago Bulls.
The Warriors just benched Jonathan Kuminga against the Bulls. Didn't play him when they were winning. Didn't play him when they were losing. Didn't play him during garbage time when the game was already over. Steve Kerr found every excuse possible to keep him glued to that bench. And now, multiple NBA insiders are saying a trade is basically guaranteed once January 15th hits. The Jonathan Kuminga experiment in Golden State is officially over. Do you think the Warriors are making the right call here, or are they giving up on him too soon?
Most notably, the Jonathan Kuminga experiment appears to have taken another sideways turn. First 7 games of this season, Rachel, Jonathan Kuminga was great. 17.7 rebounds. Looked like he was turning a corner. Was going to live up to the expectations that Kuminga had for all those years and all the hype that was behind him. Last 3 games, as we record this on Monday, he has scored 3 games he played in December, I should say. He scored 7 points, or averaged 7 points.
Let's start with what happened against the Chicago Bulls, because this wasn't just a routine benching. This was Steve Kerr sending a message so loud that everyone in the building could hear it.
This move signals to me that Steve Kerr is just done with Jonathan Kuminga. Yeah, he's sending him a signal a little bit. Yes, he's going to have to get him back in the lineup to prop his trade value up a little bit, but this is a clear message that the Warriors and their long-term plans as far as this season goes do not include Jonathan Kuminga.
Jonathan Kuminga didn't play a single minute. 0. The Warriors won by 30 points, which means there was plenty of garbage time to go around. Plenty of opportunities to get him some run, keep him engaged, maybe boost his trade value a little bit. But Steve Kerr chose not to. He played guys like Pat Spencer, Guy Santos, and DeAnthony Melton over Kuminga. That's not a basketball decision. That's a relationship decision.
Kuminga out of the rotation tonight for the first time this year. It's not his first time in this position. How do you hope he processes it?
I'm sorry?
How do you hope he processes not playing tonight, getting DNP'd?
Just got to keep going, just like everybody else who's in this position. And it happens to everybody, pretty much, other than the stars. Guys come in and out of the rotation depending on, who's available, how the team's playing. Really wanted to get Guy. I think the way Guy has played the last couple of nights, and after what he did down the stretch last year, you see the impact he makes with his energy. And then obviously getting Melt back. We've got and Pat's emergence. I mean, we've got a lot of mouths to feed, and tonight this is what we decided to do.
When asked about it after the game, Kerr gave this explanation about how Jimmy Butler was back in the lineup and they play the same position, and he liked the bench group they'd been running lately. All perfectly reasonable surface-level answers that completely avoid the actual issue, which is that Steve Kerr doesn't trust Jonathan Kuminga anymore. Hasn't trusted him for a while. Probably never will trust him again.
Why was it tonight? Why was it this game that you decided to make the move?
Just because of the way our team looks, and Jimmy came back tonight. JK started last night. They play the same position. I like the group. The last couple of nights, the bench group, Guy, Pat, Melt, and Philly. We got a lot of bodies, and so with Jimmy coming back tonight, it made sense to play the other guys because they complement him really well.
And honestly, when you look at Kuminga's recent performance, you can understand why. Since coming back from his knee tendonitis injury, he's been 8 for 32 from the field over 3 games. That's awful. He went 1 for 10 against the Cavaliers. 1 for 10. You can't get minutes when you're shooting like that, especially when you're also not providing much defensively and you don't fit with the surrounding talent. The Warriors have played 15 different starting lineups this season. That's a ridiculously high number for a team that's supposed to be contending. Part of that is injuries. Part of that is Steve Kerr trying to figure out what works. But a big part of that is Jonathan Kuminga not fitting into any lineup configuration they try. He doesn't mesh with Steph. He doesn't mesh with Jimmy Butler. He doesn't mesh with Draymond. At some point, you stop blaming the lineups and start accepting that maybe this player just doesn't work in this system.
Steve Kerr was clearly just looking for an excuse to not play Jonathan Kuminga, and he got one in Jimmy Butler returning back to the lineup. It doesn't help either when Kuminga is abysmal from the field. Since he returned from injury, the knee tendonitis that he suffered, and it kept him out for a couple of weeks there, he's been 8 of 32 from the field over the last 3 games. He was 1 for 10 in that Cavs game. So, yeah, naturally, if a guy doesn't fit next to the surrounding pieces that you have, and he's not producing on his own, then there's no reason for him to be in the lineup, especially when he's as disengaged and just overall lackluster in effort as he is really on both sides of the floor.
The crazy part is that Kuminga looked good at the start of the season. First 7 games, he averaged 17 points and 7 rebounds. He looked like he'd turned a corner. Like maybe all those years of development were finally paying off. Like maybe he was going to justify all the hype that came with being a lottery pick. And then reality set in. Last few games he played in December, he averaged 7 points. 7. That's not starter production. That's barely rotation player production. And now he's getting DNP CDs while guys you've barely heard of are getting his minutes. That's humiliating for a former lottery pick who signed a contract extension this offseason. Speaking of that contract, it's important to understand why the Warriors structured it the way they did. Kuminga is making about $23 to $24 million this year with a team option for next year at roughly the same number. By NBA standards, that's an extremely tradable contract. The Warriors negotiated that deal specifically to maximize trade flexibility. They didn't give him the max extension he wanted. They didn't lock themselves into a long-term commitment. They gave him just enough money to make salary matching work in trades while keeping the option to walk away after next season. That's not how you structure a deal for someone you view as a core piece. That's how you structure a deal for someone you're planning to move. And according to multiple NBA insiders, that move is coming soon. Anthony Slater of ESPN and Shams Charania both reported that the chance of a Jonathan Kuminga trade remains very strong once his trade restriction lifts on January 15th. That's the date his new contract becomes eligible to be traded. The Warriors can't move him before then, even if they wanted to. But the second that restriction lifts, expect the phones to start ringing. So where does he go? Let's talk about the teams that make sense and what the Warriors might be able to get back. The Sacramento Kings have been linked to Kuminga since the offseason. They tried to trade for him back then, offering packages that included Malik Monk and a first-round pick. That deal didn't happen, but according to Mark J. Spears of ESPN, the Kings remain interested. The catch is that they probably won't include a first-round pick this time. Kuminga's salary is higher now after his extension, which means the Kings would have to include more salary to make a trade work. That could mean a bigger name coming back to Golden State. One potential framework that's been floated involves the Warriors getting Malik Monk and Keon Ellis in exchange for Kuminga and Trace Jackson Davis. The Warriors would also get a few second-round picks for taking on Monk's contract, which still has 2 years and $41 million left. Keon Ellis is a really solid young player who can handle the ball, defend multiple positions, and knock down threes. Malik Monk gives you another creator who can run pick and roll and score in bunches. But here's the problem with that trade. The Warriors already have a lot of guards. They don't really need more ball handlers. What they need is wing defense and rim protection. Trading away one of their few big men in Trace Jackson Davis to get back more guards doesn't solve their actual problems. It just shuffles the deck chairs on the Titanic. A better option might be the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are going nowhere this season. They're building around young players like Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. They could use an athletic forward like Kuminga who still has upside if he gets a change of scenery. And they have players the Warriors desperately need. Herb Jones is the name that keeps coming up. He's one of the best wing defenders in basketball. He can guard 1 through 5. He's completely switchable. He's hitting threes at a better rate than usual this year, though the volume is still low. He's not going to give you much as a shot creator, but he makes everyone around him better defensively. Pairing Herb Jones with a healthy Jimmy Butler would give the Warriors one of the best wing defender combinations in the league. Sports Illustrated proposed a trade where the Warriors send Kuminga, Gary Payton II, and a lottery-protected 2026 first-round pick to New Orleans for Herb Jones and Kevon Looney. That's a reunion with Looney, who the Warriors probably regret letting walk in free agency. He'd give them another big body who understands their system and can set screens and rebound. And Herb Jones would immediately upgrade their defense to potentially the best in the league outside of Oklahoma City. That's a trade I'd make in a heartbeat if I'm Golden State. You're giving up Kuminga, who doesn't fit and isn't playing anyway. You're giving up GP2, who's been injured and inconsistent. And you're giving up a protected first-round pick for two players who directly address your biggest weaknesses. That's called addition by subtraction. But let's get wild for a second. Let's talk about the LA Clippers and Ivica Zubac. Multiple insiders have reported that teams are calling the Clippers about Zubac. He's one of the best centers in the league who doesn't get enough recognition. He's averaging a double-double, protecting the rim, setting great screens, and he's only 27 years old. The Clippers are setting a steep asking price because they have no draft capital. They've traded away all their picks in various deals over the years. So here's a hypothetical. The Warriors send Jonathan Kuminga and 2 first-round picks to the Clippers for Ivica Zubac. Yes, that's a lot to give up. Yes, trading 2 first-round picks for a center when you already have an aging core is risky. But if the goal is to maximize Steph Curry's remaining championship window, you do it. You get a legitimate starting center who solves your rim protection issues and gives you another lob threat for Steph to work with. The Clippers get a 23-year-old with upside and 2 valuable draft picks to help rebuild. The Warriors get the big man they've needed since they let Looney walk. That's going all in. That's saying we believe Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond can still win if we surround them with the right pieces. But my favorite trade scenario involves 3 teams. The Warriors get Nick Claxton from the Nets. The Kings get Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield. The Nets get a protected first-round pick from Sacramento, Malik Monk, and Dario Saric. Let me break down why this works for everyone. The Warriors get Nick Claxton, who's 25 years old, making $25 million a year, and is one of the best young defensive centers in basketball. He can switch onto guards, he can protect the rim, he can run the floor. He fits perfectly with what the Warriors want to do. They also get Devin Carter from the Kings, who's a young prospect with upside. The Kings finally get their guy in Kuminga. They've been chasing him for months. They get Buddy Hield back, which would be a fun reunion for Sacramento fans. They give up Malik Monk, who's on an expensive deal, and some draft capital. But they get the young forward they've been targeting all along. The Nets get value for Nick Claxton, who's their best player but won't be part of their next championship team whenever they decide to actually try winning again. They get Malik Monk, who's a quality scorer. They get a protected first-round pick from a bad Kings team, which could end up being valuable. And they get Dario Saric, who's an expiring contract. That's a trade where everyone walks away feeling like they got something useful. The Warriors address their biggest need. The Kings get their target. The Nets get assets for a rebuild. It's clean. It makes sense. It should happen. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is trading Jonathan Kuminga the right move for Golden State? Because there are legitimate arguments on both sides. The case for trading him is obvious. He doesn't fit. Steve Kerr doesn't trust him. His shooting has been terrible. He's not providing defense. He's taking up a roster spot and salary that could be used on someone who actually helps them win now. The Warriors are 13-14 after their loss to Portland. They're middle of the pack in the Western Conference. They're not good enough to coast into the playoffs and suddenly figure it out. They need to make changes, and Kuminga is the most obvious change to make. The case against trading him is that he's still only 22 or 23 years old, depending on when his birthday is. He's shown flashes of being really good. He's athletic, he can get to the rim. On a different team with a different system and a different coach, maybe he becomes the player everyone thought he'd be when the Warriors drafted him. Maybe this is just a bad fit and not a bad player. But here's the thing. The Warriors don't have time to wait for maybes. Their championship window is closing fast. They can't afford to keep investing minutes and patience into a player who might figure it out eventually when they need production right now. That's the cold reality of having an aging core. You trade the future for the present because the present is all you've got left. Steve Kerr made his feelings pretty clear in that quote after the Bulls game. He talked about how guys like Guy Santos brought energy and made the offense flow better. He talked about how Pat Spencer is playing well. He basically said all these other players are more valuable right now than Jonathan Kuminga. That's damning stuff from your head coach. That's not something you come back from.
When you talk to
Yeah, all that stuff is private.
Though we're going another way.
And Kuminga's response to the benching was predictably PR trained. He said he and Steve Kerr have a good relationship. They talk things out. He's staying positive and focused on the next game. All the right things to say publicly.
to that point, how do you think your relationship is with Steve right now?
We have to deal with it. We get to talk and figure out things, you know. We don't have any problem. No. Like I said, I don't have any problem. They didn't just go my way today, so, you know, I'm gonna stay happy, I'm gonna stay lucky, I'm gonna stay focused.
But you know he's frustrated. You know he wants out. His agency is probably advising him to keep things professional so he doesn't hurt his trade value. But this relationship is cooked. Everyone knows it. The only question is when the trade happens, not if. So, Jonathan Kuminga got the DNP treatment while the Warriors blew out the Bulls, and Steve Kerr basically announced he's done with the experiment. Trade rumors are swirling, teams are calling, and January 15th can't come fast enough for everyone involved. The Warriors are pulling the trigger on this move, whether Kuminga likes it or not. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, because this trade deadline is about to get crazy.